Hi, I'm Frankie Smith, founder of Frankie's, a financial education network dedicated to empowering you to be bold with the financial decisions you're making. And this is Talking Frankly with founders and investors. In each episode, I speak to investors and entrepreneurs about their financial journey, from seeking investment opportunities to pitching, fundraising, and scaling their businesses, along with juggling their personal finances. Through their stories, we'll find out more about how you can make the right decisions along your own journeys. In this episode, I'm speaking to Ruth Handcock, Chief Executive of Octopus Money, which is on a mission to bring friendly financial planning to millions of people. In our fascinating chat, she tells me why it's hugely important to think long-term about money, why building a great team is critical to being a successful company founder, and why leadership involves communicating effectively with the different types of people you work alongside. So welcome everyone to my next episode of Talking Frankly with founders and investors. And I'm absolutely delighted this morning to be joined by Ruth Handcock, CEO of Octopus Money. So welcome, Ruth, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Ruth, you're currently the CEO of Octopus Money. Can you tell us a little bit about this initiative and why Octopus decided to found this business?
Yeah, absolutely. So Octopus Money is on a mission to give everyone access to help with their money. So we found that if you're wealthy in the UK, you're lucky enough to get access to some brilliant financial advisors. And so the most wealthy 8% of people are really well looked after. For most other people who get out of bed in the morning and say, I just don't get a lot of this stuff. People are talking to me about pensions. They're talking to me about ISAs. It's all complete gobbledygook. We've built a business for them. So we work with workplaces across the UK, launch as an employee benefit, and invite everyone to come and have sessions with real people to get to grips with their money and hopefully get a long-term plan that they feel will help them live the life they want to live.
Amazing. And I think that's such an interesting point, because even as a financial advisor myself, working with founders and professionals, I'm always so staggered by how financially illiterate we are in the UK. And actually the confidence levels span across all, everyone in many respects. And it can come as a surprise that I've always learning not to make assumptions on what people know and the knowledge that they have. What do you think, where do you think this stems, and what do you think we can do as a society to help to improve this?
So I think, money is something we deal with every day. It feels very strange that something that we interact with day in, day out, people still feel so scared of. But I think there's a couple of routes. One is maths. Is people really heavily conflate money with maths, and lots of people, for whatever reason, through education, found maths really difficult. So for them, money is in that bucket, and they look at it and it invokes fear and feelings of failure rather than, that's something I want to really invest in and do more in. What you and I know is money isn't really about maths, it's about emotion and it's about planning, and the maths is the sort of easy bit in a way. So I think that's one reason. The second is that, as we know, we don't really get taught about this at school. Now, I have really mixed feelings on whether I think finance should be a really core part of the education system. I think it should. I think that foundation is really useful. But let's not forget that in any new skill you learn, the only way you really embed a skill is to use it. And so we have to think about the moments in people's lives when they have money to use. So while I think education's important, actually, we found that first job is also really important. The first paycheck, the understanding what it all means, the taking responsibility for your own financial freedom, that's a really critical point too. And I think it's a point that people talk a lot less about. We get obsessed with financial education in schools, brilliant. But let's not forget that there's that embedding moment later. And then the third thing is that it's an industry full of acronyms. And actually, I think traditionally has been an industry where some people have made it more complicated in order to create roles for themselves.
Yeah.
And so we've created lots of words and ways of talking about money that are sort of deliberately complicated. And that scares people off, and they think, well, I don't know what a pension is, and I'm going to feel really stupid if I ask, so I'm just not going to go near it. I'm just going to put my money under my mattress and be done with it. And you and I know that that's probably not going to deliver the financial freedom that most people really want to achieve in their lives. So a huge range of reasons, but fundamentally it's sort of human emotion that says, I'm scared of this, I'll push it away.
Yeah, and I think I share the same views that knowledge is power has been what maybe the industry has kind of used over the course of the last couple of decades. And what's exciting is the amount of people coming through like yourself and what you're doing at Octopus and others and what I'm trying to do at Frankie's to disrupt that and turn that around and really try to make it accessible. Often I sometimes get asked whether it's taught behaviour from childhood, so beyond school, but actually looking at our relationships with family members and how they reacted and interacted with money. How much of an impact do you think that has on people?
I think there's some truth in it, but I don't think it's a linear relationship necessarily. I mean, you will meet endless families where siblings behave in completely different ways towards money, even though theoretically they've had exactly the same family upbringing. So as with many things human, it's a conflation of your experiences as childhood, your inherent personality traits, your confidence at maths, your probably your sort of confidence as an individual all come together to create an emotional response to money that is very personal to you. And that's the other thing that our industry has often overlooked, is that, again, one of the phenomenal things about financial advice is that it's personalised. What we find in the mass market, so, the vast majority of the population, there isn't very much that's personalised to you. You can go onto a website and you can read information and you can try and derive what it means for you. But that's quite a difficult thing to do when it's a new topic for you. So the real power in what we do, I think, is taking those best bits of financial advice and saying, we're not just going to tell you what a pension is, we're going to help you figure out how to change your own financial situation for your family. And that's suddenly when the lights come on, they go, I kind of get what this means for me, regardless of personality type, actually. But yeah, all of those social cues definitely play into it, but not in a way that's predictable, I don't think.
Completely agree. And in your, if you taking a step back for you personally, and somebody came to you and said, we're right at the start of our wealth building journey, we haven't really interacted with money or thought about it in that much depth before, what would be your advice or guidance that you would give to somebody right at that starting point of how to get started?
Yeah, it's a great question. So clearly what we do at Octopus Money is we match someone with a coach who helps them get to a plan. What I think is important is taking someone from short-term thoughts about money, because unless you can get through to the end of the month comfortably, then it's very hard to think long-term. So you need to start with budgeting. So how do I comfortably feel like my income is greater than my expenditure month in, month out? Then how do I make sure that I've got enough emergency fund that if something goes wrong, I'm not really stressed about it? There are some terrifying stats about how few people in the UK have enough money in savings to fix the washing machine if it breaks. If that's your day-to-day life, then that's the problem you need to solve before you start to think about anything else. But once you've got to that stage, thinking, okay, how does this look over the next few years starts to become important. And that's the classic important, not urgent conversation to have. So we will all put off things that are important, not urgent forever and ever because we've got better things to do. We might worry about budgeting. It's rare that we worry about our long-term financial plan. That said, every day, week, year that goes past that you don't have a plan, every week, month that you're not optimizing your pension or investing rather than saving, you're getting probably further away from your goals. So to me, the next thing is, what are your goals? Those might be a year away. They might be 5 years away. They might be retirement. And then how do I work towards them? And when you piece all of that together, you've gone from how do I get through to the end of the month to I feel like I'm going to be able to live the life I want to live. But that is a journey, and it's a journey where you have to pick off each problem along the way to really open your eyes to I kind of get how this all adds up for me and my family.
Yeah. And a lot of the work that I do is focused around kind of women and looking at the gender gap and the gender wealth gap that we're experiencing. But actually, over the last few months, I've really kind of looked into that more in terms of whether is it a gender problem, or actually, is it a much broader issue, as we're touching on now, with regards to actually just people being time poor, not necessarily thinking that they're at the right stage, and not really knowing where to go to seek the advice. And I'm kind of in two camps at the moment as to where I fall. But what's your views on kind of the gender aspect, and whether advice and wealth needs to be tailored more towards women? Do you think that we need to approach it in a different way to attract the females, or is it just better to keep it broad?
It's a great question, and I'm much like you in two camps. So do I think we have designed a financial services industry that appeals to women? Absolutely not. Mainly because there aren't many women historically who have worked in it. And so I don't really believe that you design an industry to appeal to a particular type of individual unless you've got enough people making decisions who come from that same group. So is it optimized for women? Absolutely not. We see that women invest less. We see that women are less confident. We see that they are less likely to be self-directed when it comes to their money. So designing services to meet the needs of those individuals is something that we haven't been brilliant at doing. But there are many other groups that we haven't been brilliant at serving either. Number one for me is 92% of the population that currently don't get financial advice. We haven't been brilliant at designing things that genuinely offer help for that group. We know that people who come from different socioeconomic backgrounds have different attitudes to wealth and need different types of support. We know that people from different ethnic minority groups have exactly the same. They have different cultural cues. They will have different experiences. So, if you start from the needs of the customer, then absolutely, I think within each of those cohorts of people who think similarly and have similar attitudes to money, we haven't been great at designing services and journeys and products that work for them. But that creates a huge opportunity for people like you and me to do that. The one interesting thing I'll say is when we launch in a workplace, and we go in and we say, right, we will offer everyone help with the money. The first session for everyone is free. Just come and talk to us. Come and tell us how you feel about money and what your worries are. I expected to see a bias in who signed up. So in any given workplace, on average, about 40% of people sign up for a session, which just shows you how gigantic the unmet need is. But there is not a particular gender skew. I thought it would be more female focused because all of the research I've read said women have fewer places to go help and they're more likely to want someone to guide them. We don't actually see that in the people who sign up for sessions, which I think is quite fascinating. So it shows you that underserved groups exist everywhere, and they're not necessarily the ones that we might expect.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that. I've been doing some corporate workshops myself and found similar. That actually, even with the kind of female leaning that I have, a lot of men are signing up, and that gap's across the board. Just touching on something that you said earlier around the fact that 92% of the UK population don't have a financial advisor or aren't seeking advice at the moment. I don't know if you saw last weekend there was an article in the FT which said something that just completely shocked me, that there are more financial advisors nearing 70 in the UK than there are under 30. So I'm really interested to hear, what are your thoughts on how do we get more young people considering this as a career? And have you seen younger coaches coming through from your Octopus Money program that are looking to change careers and move into this space?
Yeah, it's a great question because I look at stats similarly that there are more people, there are 25,000 financial advisors and 10,000 of them are due to retire in the next 10 years. It's terrifying. What we find, because our model is the person that you interact with as a financial coach rather than a regulated financial advisor, and we have technology that provides regulated financial advice, what we've really done is unpicked the regulatory model such that we can provide what to a customer feels like quite a similar service to financial advice, but at a much lower cost. It only works when your needs are simpler than most advised clients. So that's the cohort that we've built for. Our coaches are undoubtedly more diverse, probably skew younger than the financial advisor population. So they're about 50-50 men and women, which is not the case in financial advice. There are some who are young. There are some actually who've retired and want to give back and become financial coaches, but a much more diverse set of individuals. The thing I get really excited about, though, is coaching as a pathway into advice. So, as you know, many financial advisors come through power planning. So they come through, learn the technical skills, and then start to face clients, where coaches start by developing the empathy and the client-facing skills, and then they can add the technical skills as they go through their career. So I get really excited about it being a path to people developing careers in financial advice, but coming at it from a different angle that might appeal to different people. It might train people who get more excited about planning as a discipline as opposed to investments as a discipline. It's an interesting opportunity, I think, to think about those career pathways in quite different ways and appeal to different people. We've got a lot more to do, but certainly amongst our coaches, we do find people who are on that path, others who actually want to be coaches for the rest of their career, but some definitely who see serving more and more complex client situations an exciting path for them.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point, because personally, my passion for financial advice came from the business development work that I was doing and the clubs that I was setting up and building relationships on the ground, if you like, with the various investment clubs that I was setting up and people that I was meeting and seeing that need. So similarly, even though I was training to be an advisor, that coaching, I'm really seeing kind of at the coalface the impact that you can have can really change how you feel and spur you on to be inspired to take this as a career. And I think to anyone listening to this today, it really is an amazing job and something that I think more and more people should consider getting involved in. And there's such an opportunity as well, as we're saying, coming in the next decade for people looking to get into this space. Recently, I had a look at some of the things that you've been doing and amazing features that you've had across the press. And I was reading something about an article that you did around attitudes to money and how this can have an impact on the way that CEOs run businesses. And I was really interested in this, particularly as we have a lot of founders in our community. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you meant by that and why you think it's so important?
Yeah, and it comes back to when we think about that journey from being confused about finance to feeling confident about finances, how much that impacts the career decisions you make. So some of the stats we know that people from less wealthy backgrounds progress 30% more slowly once they're in the workplace than people from more wealthy backgrounds. And there will be a huge amount of reasons for that, from the education system they went through to the family context they grew up in. But the one I think we don't talk enough about is the extent to which having a financial safety net influences your career decisions. And I think this is true whether you're in a corporate, you're sort of working your way up through an organization, but I think it's particularly acute when you're a founder. So if you are someone from a background where if everything goes wrong, you have no safety net, your parents have no spare money, you don't have an emergency fund, taking a career risk is a really, really high stakes move. We all know at those points in our careers when we've gone for the promotion, you're probably more likely to fail if you're doing something new that you've never done before. And when you don't have a safety net, that feels like a bit of a jump too far. And you're probably better making sure that you can pay your rent every month and you know you've got a stable job and you can do it. And that's the decision many people take. Yeah. It's particularly the decision many people who would in another life get excited about starting their own business take, because starting your own business, you're more financially exposed than many other things you can do. And when you look at the founder community, they absolutely skew towards people that come from more affluent backgrounds, which means I think we're missing out on this massive wealth of talent, people who aren't taking that choice simply because they can't afford to and they don't have the financial confidence to. So that's the thing that I think is a shame for sort of UK PLC, that there will be people out there who want to progress in their careers and who want to found businesses who can't because they're not confident enough in their money. Now, for some people, it's simply a case of there is not enough money to create a safety net. But for many, it's about confidence, and it's about having those strategies that mean that you know what would happen if it went wrong and you feel like that's okay for you. So that's that's one of the things that I'd love us all in the industry to help to solve.
Brilliant. And you've helped scale major businesses, having been CEO at Octopus Investments and then now moving into being CEO at Octopus Money. Can you tell us some of your key insights to supercharging growth within companies? And what advice would you give to any founders that have kind of gone through the start phase, but they're now moving into that scaling point?
Yeah, and I should say I feel your pain. So before I came to Octopus, I helped to found a challenger bank as well, and it's certainly one of the toughest things I've done in my career. One of the most brilliant, but toughest. So some of the things I've thought about is, I think over the course of running businesses, I've realised every single time how important it is to focus your team on the mission. Now, that comes very naturally to many founders because it's the reason you need that passion to do what you do, but making sure that your colleagues feel that mission day in, day out. So I used to work with a founder who every Friday morning would stand up and say, "What are we building? We're building a good bank." And that really, it became part of the psyche. And that focus on mission, which as things get busier and as you're out fundraising and out pitching, you can kind of forget how that's the main motivator for many people. So that's probably number one. The second thing I've learned is just how critical the balance of people around you is. So there's a sort of stereotypical founder who's a big thinker and imagines the impossible and is a real driver. It's rare that any founder of a business you meet is a fully rounded individual and can do every bit of what they need to. So some are really big thinkers, but they need the operator. Some are operators and they need the big thinker. So having the humility to understand who you need to fill in your gaps rather than hire people in your own image is absolutely critical, because no one is ever going to be the complete package, but your team can be the complete package. And if you get a trusted relationship across that team, then that to me is the key for delivering anything. It doesn't matter what kind of business. And then I guess the cliched one, which anyone who's in a startup business will be utterly familiar with, which is just how frequently you fail, but how much you can normalize that failure so that people in your team kind of jump back up rather than crumble and feel like they've done everything wrong. So we do something in Octopus Money called Stumble of the Week, where every time we do an all hands, we try and get people to talk about the stupidest thing they did that week, just to try and normalize the fact that stuff will go wrong all the time because you're breaking new ground. And the quicker you can bounce back up, the quicker you'll learn and the faster you'll solve the problem. But probably if you're not making any mistakes, you're not moving quickly enough. So how you normalize that, make it again part of the psyche. You hear founders talk about it a lot, but while founders get it, often people in their teams are still absolutely terrified of failing.
Yeah.
So that's another thing I'm obsessed with in any business I run.
And I think it's, as you say, it's so important because you have to get used to this feeling that, or I'm finding at the moment, where so many things will be going right and so many things will be going wrong all at the same time, and but you're still moving forwards, and it's a weird feeling, but it's as you say, that's the pain of growth, and a great thing for what's hopefully to come. Just a couple more questions from me, but if you had to focus on one thing for 2024 from a financial perspective, what would it be?
For me or for the industry?
Let's do, actually, that's a good point, for both. So for you personally and then for the industry.
So for me personally, my obsession is giving my kids a good grounding in finances. So my kids are 6 and 8. I grew up in a household that didn't have any money. So we were always very careful about every penny we spent. And I think it gave me really, really good financial discipline. So I've always had a money plan because I've always had to. My kids are fortunate that they're growing up in a household that has a little bit more spare money. So figuring out how I instill that same level of financial appreciation and discipline in my kids is really important to me. So we do pocket money. We talk about how behaviour changes the amount of pocket money they get. We talk about, should they buy that bag of sweets in Sainsbury's or should they save up for the thing they really want? It's very difficult because the kids don't really deal in cash anymore because we don't. So they have this feeling that you press a button on your phone and stuff just arrives in the post and don't really understand that money changes hands. So how you get some of those appreciations into the next generation is probably my personal financial mission. I think for the industry, again, it's clearly what I spend my life doing, but trying to get help for people who don't currently have help is the thing that I'm obsessed with, and making everyone feel like they deserve that help. You don't have to be rich to need financial advice. Financial advice is about getting someone from confused to I've got a plan, and the amount of wealth you have dictates the sort of service you need, but it doesn't dictate whether you're entitled to help. Everyone's entitled to help. So I think if we can start to change that and prove to the population that they deserve help too, that would be a great year for me.
Brilliant. Thank you. And just final question from me. And you've shared so many inspiring and insightful pieces with us this morning. And thank you so much for this. But just one more. If there was just one thing that you would want anyone listening to this to take away, advice from running your business and things that you've learned, what would be the one key message that you would give?
I think the thing I've learned, particularly being part of Octopus, is the importance of balancing heart and head. So anyone leading a business, you've got to recognise that amongst your team, there will be people who are logically motivated and people who are emotionally motivated. And your job as leader is to appeal to both, regardless of which is your personal motivation. So that's my constant obsession, is how do I, in my leadership style, appeal to people who want to know the plan and appeal to people who want to know why that's the plan. And that's the big thing that I've learned over the years I've been leading teams.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Ruth. I'm absolutely delighted that you were able to join us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Talking Frankly with Founders and Investors. I hope that you found it useful and it helps you when making the right decisions with your own financial journeys. If you like the show, please give us a follow in your podcast app. And if you have time, give us a rating. For more information about ways Frankies could help you, please visit our website, frankiesnetwork.com, and we look forward to chatting with you again soon.